Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about the city of Wrocław and why I think you should visit. I'll talk a little bit about things to do, what to eat, as well as some logistics like how to get there and what neighborhood to stay in, and some of the safety concerns, walkability, green spaces, and things like that. And at the very end, of course, as always, I'll break down how much I spent during my time there. So, if you're new here, my name is Kyria and I'm an avid traveler, and last year I retired early to travel the world full time. So I love to travel, to learn about travel, and to talk about travel, so let's get started. As always, I want to hear from you, so put a note in the comments if you've been to Wrocław, and if I missed any tips, put them there so that other travelers can have some good ideas. The first thing is visa. So Poland is part of the Schengen zone, which means you can only stay 90 days out of the last 180. And they're currently talking about doing an online application, but they haven't started to do that yet. It's called the ETIAS. And at the moment, they're saying that they're going to start that at the end of 2026. Of course, they said they were going to start that at the end of 2024, and they didn't. So we'll see if it actually pans out. Now let's talk about getting here. So to get to Wrocław, you can fly. And from the airport, it's very easy to take a bus or a train to the center. It takes about 30 minutes and it costs about €1 or currently around $1.20, depending on what the exchange rate is. And it's quite easy. You do need to download, or it's easier if you download the app, which I'll put the name of on the screen because it's a little hard to pronounce, but I found it quite easy. You download the app and then you can put some money on the app so that you're not paying each time, but let's say you put 30 zlotys on the app, and then the ride costs 6 zlotys each time. And all you need to do when you get onto the bus is you need to validate the bus that you're on. So there's a number on the bus, and you just have to put that into the app, and then it'll charge you the 6 zlotys. And essentially you have a certain amount of time depending on which one you choose. You can also take the train to Wrocław, and it's quite easy. The train network is very good in Poland and in Europe in general, obviously. And so if you do take the train, the main train station is just south of the old town by about a little less than a mile. So if you do walk from the train station, it's about a 20-minute walk, or you can always take the public transportation or an Uber or a Bolt. Same thing goes for the bus station. They're right next to each other. So public transportation, obviously, like I said, is quite easy. There are trams, there are buses, and you can preload the app, and that way you don't have to worry about it each time. But if you want to, you can also pay on the platform for the trams. As far as green space, there are canal paths, which are nice to walk around, or you can go over near the zoo, which is fun to walk around. And again, there's paths along that area, or you can go to the botanical garden. As far as walking, again, same thing. There are paths along the canals or the moats, and there's tons of places to walk. And also the sidewalks are fairly good, except for in the old town, there are cobblestones and a little bit of narrow sidewalks there. For running, you can run along the river, which is the Oder. And again, I ran over to the zoo, which was quite cool. There are some nice little paths there. And also the zoo has some murals on the side of the wall, which I always like looking for street art. There are good bike paths, but I didn't actually ride my bike in town, but I did see plenty of people riding. And like I said, along the river, there's lots of paths for bikes there. But even in the town, there are good bike lanes and everything like that. The only place I would say maybe isn't great is an old town, but that's because there just are a lot of tourists, there's a lot of cobblestones, and there aren't as many bike lanes. So where I stayed was just north of the old town, and it was a perfect location because it wasn't right in the very busiest part of town, but it was still walking distance to lots of the attractions that I wanted to go to. So I'll give you a quick tour now. Hello and welcome to Wrocław. I arrived, and it's kind of hot, but it's nice. This time I got a 2-bedroom because a friend of mine is going to meet up with me. So I'll give you a quick tour of this one. It's roughly about right around $100 a night. So it's a little more expensive than I would normally get, but we're only here for 4 days and we're sharing. So decided to splurge. So here we go. Let me give you a quick tour. We got a little view. And nice kitchen. No oven, but there is a toaster oven, kettle. That's all you really need. Is that an air fryer? I think it's an air fryer. Yep. Got the bendy faucet again. We got salt and pepper, coffee, sugar, tea, all the amenities that you might need. It's actually well laid out. I also like that these are regular sized cups, not the little tiny ones that you sometimes get. Plenty of space if you need to stay for a while. It's got paper towels, which I like. The last place I had did not have those. Okay, bedroom number 1, which I've claimed, so I did start to spread out a little. Double bed and view of the backyard. So lots of closet space though, and space in general. Oh yeah, a playpen, I think. So let's see, nice TV, a fan, there's air conditioning too. This is the little room which I'm gonna give my friend because she gets the balcony, right? Is that a good trade-off? I think that's a good trade-off. All right, and last but not least, the bathroom. Kind of small, shower, but no big deal. Lots of toilet paper, love it. Also, there is a washer, which I will be utilizing in a minute. All right, and that's it, I guess. So welcome. So let's talk about payment methods. It was very easy to use my card pretty much everywhere. I didn't really need too much cash. And like I said, you can use the app to go on the buses and stuff, so you don't need cash for that. So the only thing you might need cash for is to tip for the walking tours. But the walking tour that I ended up taking, which was put on by Walkative, they actually accepted PayPal as well as cash. So you actually wouldn't need any cash. However, I still paid the walking tour guide his tip in cash. You might actually need a little bit of cash for the toilet as well, but there are some toilets now that are going to the card system, but it's still sometimes a little bit hit and miss. So I always like to have just a few of whatever the change is, in this case Lottie's, just in case I need to use the toilet. And I even went to the market hall, which I'll talk about in a minute, and you have to pay for the toilet there. So there are still places that you have to use cash. And just as a side note, I actually traveled here with a friend and she didn't get any cash out, but I did end up having to pay for her toilet a couple of times because there were a couple places that we went that didn't take cards only. As far as language barrier goes, you're not going to have any issues with that here. Of course, if you stay in the main Old Town area, then it won't be an issue at all. If you go farther afield, I don't really know how that is, but where I was staying, I didn't have any issues at all. The weather is fairly good. It does get below freezing in the winter, but in summertime, it doesn't get super, super hot normally. That's just the average, not the outliers. And the amount of rain that it gets per year is about 620 millimeters, which I will put the conversion up on the screen. And for health, it's the same thing as a lot of places. There is public health. It is sometimes slow wait times. And if you're an expat, the doctors may not speak English if you're doing that. So it might be better to get private health so that you are more likely to find an English-speaking doctor. There are no issues with food or water safety, and the tap water is drinkable. As far as embassies, there are no embassies. You need to go to Warsaw if you want to go to most embassies. For safety, according to Dumbeo, the crime index is 25.4, where lower is better, and the safety scale is 74.5, where higher is better. So it's quite good. For solo travel, like I said, I was with a friend in this case, but I was without her for 1 day before she arrived and had no issues feeling unsafe or anything like that. I even went and walked over to the bus station to get her in the dark and didn't feel unsafe at all. Also, her bus was actually late, so I walked over to the bus station and then it didn't arrive, so I actually went and got a drink by myself and waited for her, and again, no issues there. Okay, now let's get to what you've been waiting for. What is there to do? So the main attraction is the Old Town, and there are a lot of different things in the Old Town. The Old Town was very damaged in World War II, and so a lot of it has been reconstructed, but they did do a very good job of reconstructing everything kind of in the similar vein. Of course, the thing everyone wants to know about is the dwarves. So they're kind of overtaking the city, but they started off as an anti-communist movement in the early 1980s. And now they are all over the city, and it is fun to go and try to see how many dwarves you can find. In fact, one of the tours I did was a Dwarves and Communism tour. So I did 2 free walking tours in Wrocław, and one of them was the normal one, just to get to know you one, and the second one was a Dwarves and Communism tour. And I did find that was quite interesting to learn a little bit more about the dwarves than just them being kind of a treasure hunt, which is fun too, but that's not what they were started as. So in the Old Town, there is a huge square, which is one of the largest and best preserved market squares in Poland, and has like tons of colorful houses, and it's just really, really pretty. One of the main buildings there is the Old Town Hall, which you can't miss, which dates back to the 13th century. It's a really big Gothic style building, and it's served as many different things over the years: administrative, judicial, and cultural centers, but now currently is housing the Museum of Bourgeois Art. There's also a house with a Polish name, which I'll put on the screen, but its nickname is the Hansel and Gretel houses. The reason they're called Hansel and Gretel is that they're two adjoining medieval tenements with an archway connecting them. There are a lot of other things to do in the Old Town, and it is also just fun to wander around, and there are tons of bars and restaurants and shops to look at as well. However, let's next head over to the Cathedral Island. So that's just north of the Old Town, and it's on the other side of the canal or moat. And you can just walk straight up and you'll be right in it. It's walking distance from the Old Town. This is the oldest part of Wrocław and is kind of the religious heart of the city. I can't remember exactly how many churches or cathedrals are on Cathedral Island, but it's quite a lot in very small amount of space. So I'll get into the churches in a minute, but another thing that you might not think about, which was really fun, is that they still have a traditional lamplighter. So back in the day when the original lamplighter had to go light all the lamps, he did it with gas. And he goes one by one and has to light them. So they preserved that tradition, and he goes still every night and lights all the lamps. Apparently there are 100 of them, and it's quite funny because he starts when it starts to get dark. And so it's not necessarily a specific time. So everyone's kind of waiting for him to come. And then when he does come, everyone starts following him. So it's like the Pied Piper or something. You have this guy going and lighting each lamp, and all these people following him, taking pictures of him, and with their Insta360s and everything. But it's really funny because you can figure out where he is because you just see this horde of people moving from lamp to lamp. So my friend and I actually brought a little picnic and a beer, and we sat on the stoop and just waited for him to kind of come to us instead of following him around. So while you're sitting there waiting for the lamplighter, you can kind of go and look at most of the churches. The main one is the cathedral, and it was built somewhere in the 13th to 14th century, and you can't miss it. It is a sight to behold. There's several other ones. I'm not going to go over them all. You can go and explore on your own. But when you're walking back towards the Old Town from the Cathedral Island, you'll walk right past the market hall, which is called the Hala Targowa. In the market hall, there's a bunch of stalls selling fruits and nuts and wares and stuff. And there's also a couple of milk bars in there, or one milk bar in there, where you can go and get a traditional Polish milk bar meal. And what a milk bar is, if you've never been, is it's kind of a cafeteria style meal that they used to do meals for the workers. And so they were inexpensive, local food, cafeteria style, fast, and they still continue to be that to this day. So I went to the milk bar in the hall, the market hall, and ordered some Polish food, and it was quite an experience. It was really fun. I recommend, if you haven't ever tried it, the żurek, which is a soup, which kind of is a little bit mustardy and has some sausage in it. And of course, if you haven't tried pierogi, you can get pierogi there, but to be honest, those weren't the best pierogi I've ever had, so maybe get your pierogi somewhere else. The other thing which is really cool is closer over to the train station, and it's called the Passage or Transition. And what it is, it's a bunch of people on one side of the street, they're all kind of disappearing into the sidewalk, and on the other side of the street, they're all walking out of the sidewalk. And it's a commemoration of the citizens that were forced underground during Poland's martial law period. Another thing which is cool to see is the Neon Street, and this is over on the Old Town side. And this is a street where there's a bunch of old neon signs that they decided to just hang up on the side of the walls, and then they have a bunch of places where you can get a drink there. So I didn't go through when it was dark, but even when it's light, if you go around 5 or 6 o'clock, you'll see a lot of people out having a drink and everything, and they've got the signs lit up, but it's not as much of an impact as it would be if it was dark. You should also go and see the Prison Street, which leads from the Old Town to the prison. And this was the street, or this was the walk that the prisoners had to walk when they were going to go get executed. Now it's got a bunch of bars and cafes and stuff. Another fun thing to do is you can go kayaking on the river. So you can only go a certain direction because you're not allowed to go too close to Cathedral Island, but it's really fun just to kayak around and for an hour of fun and kind of see everything from a little bit of a different view. All right, so now I'll talk about a few food places. So aside from the milk bars, you can also go to a place that's in the north side of the Old Town, which I'm probably going to butcher, but it's called Restaurant Wrocławska. Anyway, it's a Polish restaurant and they have some local dishes. And it's a little bit more expensive than a milk bar, but it's worth it for a nice sit-down dinner. I also really enjoyed, if you're going over to the train station or the bus station, there is a street that is right under the rail line. And they've made a bunch of shops and bars and stuff under the rail line. And when I was waiting for my friend, I went to a place called the Bear Beer Bar. That's a mouthful. And just sat and had a drink. And it's a really lively little street. It's really fun. Tons of little people out sitting with the chairs and stuff out on the sidewalk and everything. It's very fun. And then last but not least, we went to this place called the Morovia Wine Bar. And it was a Monday. And we just wanted to get a beer and sit and chill out. And this is a really cool venue because it's in an old historical building. And I had actually walked past it when I was going to get my friend from the train station. And I said, oh, we need to go check this out because it looks interesting. So we went back and there was a guy sitting outside having a glass of wine. And so we sat down at one of the tables and the guy who was having a glass of wine came over to us and gave us a menu. And he didn't speak any English. And so basically we ordered beers and come to find out he must have been the owner and they were closed on Mondays and he was on his bike. So he must have just been taking a bike ride and went to like refresh the inventory or whatever he was going to do and decided to have a glass of wine. And because we saw him out there having a glass of wine, we thought they were open, but he served us and was super nice and was very patient with us. And even because we were sitting there, more people came and sat down and he just served them as well. So super nice guy. Definitely worth it. The beers were kind of expensive, but I just think the customer service was awesome. So I would recommend that place. All right, now the fun part. Let's talk about cost. So I was in Wrocław for 4 days. For accommodation, I spent $239. That is only my portion of the place that we got. So the place that we rented was quite expensive, and getting a 2-bedroom versus a 1-bedroom is a lot of additional cost, actually. For dining out, I spent $95. And for groceries, I spent $13. Like I said, we went out to eat quite a bit, and we also bought some expensive beers. So dining out was a lot more than I normally spend for 4 days. For entertainment, I spent $28. For transportation, I spent $16, and that just included the bus to get to Wrocław from Warsaw. And for fixed cost, I spent $24, and that includes any phone, health insurance, anything I pay for annually, like credit card fees or cloud storage or security for my computer, anything like that. I just total it all up and prorate it out depending on how many days I'm staying. So all in all, I spent $415, which comes out to $104 a day. So if you watched my previous video of Warsaw, you'll know that I didn't spend very much there, but I definitely made up for it in Wrocław. So there you have it. That's what to do and any logistics about Wrocław and the total cost of staying there for 4 days. So let me know, have you been there? What did you think? Did you enjoy it? What things did I miss? And if you like this video, please subscribe and give it a like. And thank you very much for watching and happy travels. Oh, my butt's falling asleep. Oh, my butt's falling asleep. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Had to resituate here. And it served as many different things over the years: administrative, judicial, administrative, judicial,